Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Women's Fitness Academy podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ellen. I am an educator for Women's Fitness Academy as well as a binge and body image coach. And today I'm here with someone who I met through Instagram. I honestly feel like every single person that I have on here is like, I met them through Instagram. But this person is a girl with many specialties. She is an osteopath. She's a women's health coach. She's a WBFF Pro and just won like a huge competition. Also a photographer, and I'm pretty sure she's also a makeup artist. So welcome to the podcast, Morgan.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you. yes,
Yes.
many hats.
So many hats. Like I remember the first time. So Morgan and I have done like a few photo shoots together. But she just come to my house, like made me into this like glam queen, and then taking all these like crazy, sexy photos of me. And it's been like so empowering, and I've loved like every single time we work together. But yeah, I remember I was like, you're an osteopath, you're an online coach, you're a photographer, you're a makeup artist. I'm like, what can't you do?
I just like whatever I kind of enjoy and I'm passionate about, I'm like, let's give this a go. And I think there's also like connection between what you're passionate about and, you know, I guess that can translate into like the work that you do, right? And the more you're passionate about it and enjoy it, the less it feels like work. But I feel like they're all intertwined as well. And we've done some amazing shoots together. So yeah, that was lots of fun.
I mean, it's definitely a good skill to have, to be able to do makeup and like photo shoots with someone, and also having your background in like WBFF and like competing in bodybuilding, because you know how to pose, you know like what makeup looks nice and like what complements different people. So yeah, I feel like you're very right there. Like those skills, they do go very well in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, like, yeah, if you can, and I love it. It's so much fun, like dressing, glamming someone up and making them feel like a queen in front of the camera. And also just, yeah, with having that experience with posing and stuff, it's and getting feedback as well when you are in front of the camera. Because I know sometimes as well, I'm still like a deer in the headlights, like what does my body actually look like here? But if you got someone there to give you some feedback and set things up for you, makes all the difference with the finished product, right?
Oh, totally. Like the worst thing, not that I'm like a pro of photo shoots or anything, but like the worst thing I know is when you do a photo shoot and the photographer is just like click, like no feedback, no like hyping you up, no like what looks good. And then you look at the photos and you're like, if you just would have told me to like twist a tiny bit this way and look that way, a photo would have been like so much nicer,
so much better. So true. So
for the listeners who don't know you, like who are you, how did you get into fitness? Like talk us through your journey.
Yeah, so I guess like, you know, I've always been in like the health industry. I started out as like a beauty therapist and makeup artist years ago, then went to uni and did osteo. So I was working in clinic for quite a long time, and just like being in clinic, working physically, manually on people's bodies, my body started to break because, you know, it's pretty physical work. And, you know, I dabbled in the gym and then, you know, went through my whole yoga journey. I like got into yoga and was obsessed with it. Was like practicing 6 days a week for years, and, you know, did my teacher training in that. And at the same time, through that journey, I'd also done my fitness cert 3 and 4. And I kind of, I'd been doing a heap of yoga and a little bit of dabbling with CrossFit and stuff like that. And then it wasn't until I went through like a really toxic, abusive relationship that I was like, you know, sitting here with like trying to find compassion and forgiveness and lightness and all this stuff. It just wasn't working for me. And I was like, I need to go let out some anger. And I like there were a few people in the industry, and I started following a few people on Instagram. I was like, wow, she is an absolute boss. Like her body is amazing and she's so strong. You know, my first coach was Hattie Boydell with the Sports Model Project. And so I reached out to her, and that was kind of where my bodybuilding journey started. And just through doing my first, comps and stuff, people started asking me for, feedback with their training and nutrition. And that's when I started doing the face-to-face coaching. And now I've sort of transitioned sort of online now. But that's kind of how my fitness journey kind of came about.
Yeah, wow. So when you first started doing like training in the gym and stuff, did you always have as a goal to step on stage?
I think initially when I started in the gym, I actually had initially, and when I'd done my cert 3 and 4, I had a boyfriend at the time who was in the military, and he was trialing out for the Commando 2. So there was very intense training. So I'd train with him. And, that was my kind of first experience with weightlifting. And I kind of was there almost just to sort of support him and dabble in it in a way. But when I then kind of got into, I guess feeling like I wanted to do my first competition prep, that was pretty much always the focus. So the long-term goal was to get on stage.
So have you always been with WBFF that you're now, or did you start like somewhere else?
For my first season of competing, I did one show with ICN, and then the week later I did WBFF. And then just like through that experience and getting a different taste, they're very different styles of or different federations and what they look for. I just loved the whole experience in the day of WBFF, because they do put on a really good show, and it's a whole day thing, and it's it's entertaining. There's an audience there as well, which is very different in structure to some of the other federations, which are just more like everyone's kind of doing the same thing, and you kind of on and off stage quite quickly.
Yeah, definitely. You posted when you first started competing, and then from your most recent show on Instagram I don't know if it was the other day or a couple of weeks ago. All my days just melt together.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing it and I was like, damn, that is a crazy transformation. How many years is it from when you first started competing to now?
Yeah, so my first show was in 2017, but I started prepping in 2016. So I had a good year of consistent weightlifting before I got on stage. And because I'd done so much yoga, I already did have, tone in my body, but just not as much, I guess, muscle mass when I first started. But you will, with that post as well, I actually, because I had a major injury and I had knee surgery. So kind of coming out of that was another reason why I needed to kind of build more strength in my body. And I actually had to change the way that I trained just because of this kind of ongoing injury, that I now had to, give up running and impact sports. And that's why the weightlifting kind of made sense to me.
Yeah. It's so interesting because when you talk to a lot of people how they got into fitness and the gym and whatever, it is usually because they went through something in the past, like you said, that you went through a breakup, and people feel like the gym really helps them kind of move through that. So yeah,
absolutely,
it's crazy how it is something that I guess sometimes I go to CrossFit and I'm I'm paying for this shit because you feel it's so hard.
I'm dying right now.
I have literally paid to run with a fucking kettlebell on my shoulder for a mile, and I'm hating every single moment of it. But then, when you get back, sorry, behind me now, it's they're making every single kind of smoothie that's possible. So sorry guys for the noise interruption. But it's such a powerful tool for mental health. And it's just the people who you have in your life who are not training and they're complaining about not feeling so well. It's such an easy thing to get so much help for your mental health.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel some of the challenges or negative that we perceive as negative experiences can kind of drive you in different directions. And I feel getting into the gym is therapy because you're pushing through discomfort and you're pushing through potential physical not pain, but with CrossFit, that's definitely not my forte, Ellen. I mean, I feel like it's almost like every session, if you can kind of overcome that, it's like you're overcoming the, you know, negativity or the bullshit or whatever it is that's brought you to that point in the first place. Like, it's almost like there's a fight, like a very healthy fight mechanism in your nervous system when you're like moving through your session. And, you know, you go from potentially like walking in feeling frustrated or whatever's shown up on that day, and then you come out, you feel like you conquered something. And you know, I think when you push past that comfort zone, you're literally conquering yourself in a way. So I feel like mentally, you know, for me these days it is much more mental than physical.
Oh yeah, 100%. And do you feel like training, like obviously when you were going through that breakup and you were feeling a little bit broken, maybe a little bit lost, like do you feel like the gym kind of like lifting weights and training and stuff made you more resilient in other areas of your life as well?
Absolutely. Like, actually, you know, that was my therapy, and also literally building my body back physically, mentally, emotionally. And you know, even, you know, I don't know, with domestic violence, and like I think a lot of women will experience this, and being in abusive relationships, is I'd come off the back end of, so my first prep in 2017, I'd been in court like, you know, a couple of weeks before I got on stage, and then as you do, I wasn't like strong enough to break away from that relationship. And 2018 show, I literally was in court like 2 days before I got on stage. And that was the absolute tipping and breaking point for me, that I didn't go back. But it was this kind of journey of like just showing up for myself, choosing myself, building that physical strength back in my body. And with seeing those changes and then overcoming, you know, I guess that discomfort each, you know, session, and seeing the results of that really built my confidence back within myself. And that's when I actually, you know, because like, when you show up for yourself, you're choosing yourself, and that in it, that's building, you know, I guess that resilience over time.
Yeah, I love that so much. And it is so true. Like people think that, oh, like showing up for yourself is just like for work or for like specific things, but it goes into every single area of your life. And same thing, like if you can push yourself really hard in training and do like a really tough workout or lift a really heavy weight, or just like be consistent and see your body change, you are every single time you're showing up and you're going to the gym and you are pushing and you're doing that thing, you're building that relationship with yourself. So it's
absolutely
so like, it's so amazing that you were able to do that, because there's so many people who would have just been stuck in that relationship and stayed there, because it's freaking like, I talk about habit changing all the time, and this is basically breaking a habit of going back to an abuse, like someone who's been abused and someone's not treating you right. And breaking a habit is like one of the hardest things that you can possibly do.
Absolutely. And I also want to name and like advocate for anyone who, you know, sometimes we have little slips and we have little regressions, or, you know, side spurts this way, that way. But I feel like the gym and training is that, you know, grounding point that you can always come back to, and it's always there. So it's like, yeah, it may not happen easily. And like you were saying, habits are not the easiest thing to either break or instill. It takes time, consistency, practice again and again and again. But it's just, just keep showing up, right?
Yeah. And also not being so, like I see, I'm sure you get this as well from being an online coach, that people like come and they're like, I'm going to go to the gym like 6 days a week. I'm going to be so strict with my food. I'm going to do all this. And then that one tiny little thing doesn't go their way, and they're like, no, I can't do it. It's too hard. I'm not going to do it at all. So just being able to kind of just focus on that consistency and just showing up every day. And even if it is just like a 5-minute workout, or you adding in like a little piece of broccoli to your food when you've never had like a vegetable in your life, basically, like
so true.
All of those
so
things.
True. Yeah. And it's that perfectionist mindset. I feel like, you know, we all have that perfectionist mindset. We have this ideal of what we want to do, but the reality can be very different. And it's like, you know, I feel like people are very much there, that all or nothing. And like you said, if you have one little like rub in the wrong direction, it's like, oh, well, too hard, I'm just going to kind of give up now. But it's literally can be so much simpler than that. It's like, rather than being so kind of overwhelmed and having to do everything 100%. Even if you just changed one thing at a time, you'd have massive change over time if you were doing that one thing consistently.
Yeah, for sure. So you said that you were in a very like a toxic relationship. What was kind of the turning point, or like the last drop when you were like, no, I'm actually going to leave now for good? Like, did you have like extra help from like friends and family, or like how did you get to that point when you were strong enough to do it?
To be honest, I think the trauma of what like that last event that happened, and it was just like hitting the absolute rock bottom of like, you know, disrespect and like, you know, the guilt and the shame that shows up with that. It was like, there is nowhere else to go from here. Like, it's just, you know, so it was kind of at the point where it was like, okay, there's no other way than to just start like showing up for myself again. I felt like as well, I was living a bit of a double life at that point, because I feel like with abusive relationships or toxic relationships, you tend to isolate and you mask a lot of what is actually going on. So what people might see on the outside is very different from what's happening within that toxic dynamic. So yeah, I think everyone has a breaking point, and that was kind of, for me, I, you know, it was just like enough bullshit and repeating this stuff. And I mean, I look back on that now and I'm extremely grateful, even though it was very painful at the time. It's pushed me in a direction where, you know, of enrichment. And I'm now working with a lot of women that have potentially been in similar situations or just in major transitions within their lives, and just seeing and being able to help them on their journeys as well, to show up and choose themselves and, you know, come out the other side, you know, much more resilient, much more self-sufficient, confident, and especially like around like boundary setting and setting up healthy boundaries for self and standards and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I forgot what the question was, but yeah.
No, just how you kind of got to the point where you wanted to like stop.
That was the breaking point, but also, you know, it was kind of like a massive fuck you to the person as well, because there was a lot of suppression. And you know what? I was like, you know what? I'm going to get up on stage, scantily clad in a bikini in front of hundreds of people, and you can go fuck yourself, you know. And I am, you know, I felt so myself, and it was for me, and it's always been for me. And I guess that part that did feel very suppressed and, you know, controlled and, you know, disrespected.
Yeah, I love that. So would you say that it's kind of like you could finally be like the person that you were meant like to be when you got rid of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, isn't it? It's like one of those things of like, you know, you kind of go, well, I think I've always been a person that all of my greatest feats in life have been from some form of defiance or feeling like I had to fight for something. And I've realized within my system, if there isn't a little bit of fight or challenge, I kind of am like, well, I'm not going to like push as hard. So it's almost like it's like this rebellious part in my personality that in a way, it's like, I wish I never experienced that. And in another way, it's like, I've learned so much from that. He was one of my greatest teachers. And I'm so grateful because it has pushed me further into my potential and who I am today.
Yeah, no, it's so amazing that you say that. I feel like in these kind of scenarios, people either become a victim or they kind of choose to rise from it, and they use all of that trauma that happened to them and use it to make them stronger. And it's so amazing. Like when you meet people who are successful, like masters in their craft, or like just freaking unreal strong humans, and you ask them about their past, like a lot of them have gone through something fucking terrible, but they've used all of that terrible stuff to help them grow and to help them become so awesome and become so strong and resilient. But there's also so many people who've, you know, been through trauma and been through stuff, and they just haven't done the work. They basically just laid flat on the ground, said, okay, whatever happens to me, like keep it coming.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I think it just takes a lot of responsibility. It's like owning it, you know, because like even in that situation, there was just so much shit. But I was like, well, I am 50% responsible for, and I truly believe like we are the creators of our own reality. So we have things externally that are happening, but we also have choice as to how we, want to respond or react or whatever it is to that. So, that's all a learning process as well. And I feel like that can be quite triggering for some people. And it has been triggering for me in the past when people have said that to me, because I'm like, well, no, like that just shouldn't have happened or whatever. But in a way, I guess when you can reflect and look back on it, and when you can take like, full responsibility for yourself, that is so empowering as well, because it gives you the ability to take that power back and move forward with your life, rather than being like, something externally is to blame and I'm like 100% the victim here. And I know there's different levels of that, and there's totally different levels of trauma and things that happen in people's lives, and full compassion for all of that. But yeah, I guess that's just my personal experience of it.
Yeah, of course. And that's all that anyone can really talk from. Like, we can only talk from what we've experienced ourselves. Like, if I just take myself as an example, like when I struggled with like eating disorders and stuff, like, yeah, of course, like it wasn't a really nice time, but I'm so grateful because he has made me who I am now and how I can help other people. So like, girls, if you're listening to this and you are going through something that's really fucking shit, and you're just like, this is awful and I want to change, but I don't know how. Like, if you choose to want to get through it and to get the right help to get through it, like, you're going to look back on this in like a year, 2 years, maybe 10 years, and just be like, fuck, I'm grateful that I went through that, because it's made me so freaking strong, and now nothing can break me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Amen. I love that.
Well, something a bit lighter now.
Yeah.
So you did your bodybuilding comp. So one of the reasons why I wanted to interview, just like I said before we started, was that you recently did a post about how you did in this competition that you actually won as well. So big congrats to that.
Thank you.
Not just a pro, but a pro champion. Is that how they say it? Or queen? Or what do you call when you win it?
It's the Australia title.
Okay.
So yeah, WBFF Australia champion.
Amazing. See, I have no idea. The pro diva or something? I don't know. I just know that you won, you got a crown, and you looked amazing. So.
I got a crown! Yay!
Basically a queen in my eyes.
I've been watching Netflix with that crown on in my pajamas. I've got to, wear out of it,
But I'm surprised you're not wearing it now. Like, you should be wearing it for the
I should have prepared that.
Next up. So yeah, you did when you prepped for this competition, you shared after that you hadn't actually tracked your food, which is, I guess, not that I'm experienced in bodybuilding or anything like that, but I would assume that most people will be very like diligent with their tracking, like using in the app and like weighing and measuring and tracking and pre-logging and stuff, because obviously you need to get up on stage and be like really freaking shredded. You can't just be like
yeah Look, there's with bodybuilding, it's a very different thing from, say, general population wanting to do like a summer shred or going through a fat loss phase, because yes, you do need to get down to lower body fat percentages, and you have specific targets to meet and all of that sort of stuff. Look, and I think tracking macros is definitely probably the most popular way to do it, or coaches might give their clients meal plans to follow, which still has a specific calorie target and macro breakdown and all that sort of stuff. But this, I also wanted to note as well, like, this isn't the first competition I've done. I've been doing this for a while now, and I have diligently and compliantly tracked all of my macros for long periods of time and like weighed every skerrick of food in the past. But for me, it wasn't just about a physical goal. This prep for me was moving through some stuff for this year, and I am a believer in that definitely if we want to learn a skill, we have to gain that knowledge first. And, you know, that's where potentially you would employ a coach or hire a coach to get all of the basics and the foundations right. You would practice that for a period of time. But I'm also very much about, some of my core values are, you know, freedom, autonomy, and also this whole idea of self-empowerment. So I believe that to fully stand in your power, you also need to build self-trust. And for me, it's like you go through periods of where you will gain knowledge and skills over time and tools. But then it's like, okay, well, let's like integrate that and apply that back to myself. And, you know, that's how I approached it. And that was like I guess, my process around it. So it was like, okay, well, you know, I've done this for a long time. I've gained all of those skills and that knowledge around tracking my food and the nutritional value of food. But this was an intuitive prep for me in that I wanted to build more self-trust, and I wanted to integrate all the knowledge and skills that I had gained over the years from my previous coaches, which I'm so grateful for. They're all amazing. And yeah, just give it a go. And obviously it worked.
Yeah, couldn't have got any better.
And look, I wouldn't say, like, I think on the post that you're talking about as well, like I did put, and it was very abbreviated, it was like intuitive eating. And I know that intuitive eating is a term that's used with eating disorder recovery groups, and it's got nothing to do with dieting or fat loss. And I respect that, I get that. And I guess maybe what I could have used instead was an intuitive approach to my prep. So, you know, in that, it wasn't just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to eat whatever the F I want. It was literally educated guesstimation from the previous knowledge and skills that I'd learnt from tracking my food before, being able to eyeball food and knowing, okay, well, I've weighed this more than 1,000 times. I have a good idea of what I'm eating and intaking, setting targets for myself each week, and still using my biofeedback, and that was, body weight, body centimeters, caliper skin folds, and pictures, just to see how I was progressing over time. But I think the other point of it is just really working on my nervous system regulation as well. So I did, grounding techniques, daily meditation and that sort of thing, to really ground, connect into my body, listen to my higher self, and intuitively then eat from that space.
No, I love that so much. And I think that we're in a very interesting time at the moment, because I feel like a lot of people are moving away from tracking. So the tracking and flexible dieting became really, really big, like 4 or 5 years ago, that every single person was doing flexible dieting basically. And now I feel like we're kind of starting to see the backlash of it, and people are like, I don't want to fucking track anymore. Like, I don't want to use my fitness pal. I'm sick of carrying my freaking scales around everywhere. And but then they don't know how to let go, because they're so reliant on this freaking app to tell them what to eat, when they're hungry, when they should be eating, how much they should be eating. So it can be so scary to let go of. And I see so much with like the clients that I work with, who most of them struggle with binge eating, is usually because they have tracked for so long and now they have no idea how to track. So when they delete it, that you start binging, because they don't know what it feels like. They don't know what it feels like to be hungry. They don't know what fullness actually feels like because
so true.
You become so like out of tune with your body when you are constantly relying on, okay, for breakfast I'm having exactly this and this and this, no matter, like, who cares what I actually feel like eating, or if I'm hungry, if I'm full. Like, it is really overwhelming, like 100%. But
absolutely,
for someone like yourself, like, obviously a normal person doing this, they would kind of learn to listen to their hunger signals. When am I hungry, when am I full? But you obviously had like a very strict weight loss goal in mind, like a body fat target. So how did you kind of approach, like, obviously you would have been pretty hungry at times. How did you kind of work with that? Because I can imagine having like the app, maybe like, even if you're starving, you're like, okay, well, I've eaten 1,200 calories. I only have 300 calories or however many calories left to go. I can't eat right now because then I'm not going to have anything left later. But like you obviously didn't have that luxury, I guess, of seeing exactly how much left you were meant to be eating. So how did you kind of manage that kind of stuff?
Okay, so I mean, different phases of prep, you're going to obviously start to cut calories at different rates and different percentages and all of that sort of stuff. So what I would do is I would set myself, and obviously it got more restrictive closer to stage.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think with any fat loss phase, whether you're tracking or you're not, you can kind of be a little bit more flexible. You can have, you know, a little bit more treats in, you know, that kind of first part of your fat loss phase. And then as you get closer to whatever event it is, literally you're just sticking to food staples. So I, you know, knew what my food staples were. It didn't vary too much from that, but I will say I ate chocolate every day of my prep, and that's just something that's non-negotiable for me because I like to do it the most flexible, relaxed way as possible. And I do believe that being able to be relaxed in your nervous system lowers your cortisol, and you know, it has all those physiological effects on the body too. But what I did is I basically set targets. So for example, I did rely heavily on light jelly and chewing gum. Let's be honest. It's like a status when I was hungry. But what I would do is, especially towards the end of the prep, I would go a little bit more aggressively. So I just knew that I would feel hungry. And, you know, when things came up at that time, even just using a little bit of mindfulness or presence, going, okay, I can feel my tummy rumbling. Like, is this true hunger? Or is this me like being a bit emotional to something that's going on? I'm like, food. I need to like grab something and, you know, soothe that, whatever that emotion was at the time. So there's definitely a lot of that. But basically how I worked was I would sort of cut down, you know, to a lot lower food during the week. And then I would assess myself on the Saturday. So I'd do my check-in on the Saturday. And if I had reached my target, I would then do a refeed. And if I hadn't reached my target, I would need to kind of readjust the process of whatever I was thinking what the next phase would be. So basically how I worked it was I would go much lower in calories during the week. Saturday, I'd do my check-in. And if I hit my target, I would then do a refeed, and that would be a high carb couple of days, which would involve lots of rice, lots of honey, things like that, because it's just replenishing glycogen stores in the body. And then the next week I'd dip down again into, you know, the next next lot of low days, I guess you'd say, with calories. And again, I wasn't tracking, but I know obviously, you know, I had a good idea of sort of where I was at, and I just used that feedback from my check-ins, whether I was on track or I wasn't. The other thing that I did was manipulate calories in alignment with where I was at with my menstrual cycle. And I'm so big on this, I know you are too, with like, you know, educating my female clients around this, because you can really manipulate things to work in your favor. And then also bringing compassion in around the time when I'm in that luteal phase at the end of my cycle, where I'm just watery as fuck and probably feeling more emotional and probably have more like distorted thoughts around potentially how I look, you know. So I'd kind of time my refeeds around that time, just because it's, you know, nourishing. I'm getting those carbs in, I'm soothing those cravings, and kind of tying it in that way as well.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think it's so impressive that you've done this without a coach, like all by yourself, without tracking, without like, any of these like extra tools. But I guess for everyone listening, like Morgan's done this for a long period of time. So
yes, I wouldn't ever say like someone that's, you know, a beginner or never tracked before, like you need to track for a period of time, I believe, to get an understanding of the nutritional value of your food.
Yeah. And also like, because I feel like with any kind of body composition change, and I can imagine it would be like to the extreme when you're competing. But like you kind of become a little bit blind after a while. It's like, oh, I haven't really changed. I haven't really like, no, I don't know if I have lost weight. Like the scale says I have, but I can't believe this. Like, I don't believe the scales. But like,
absolutely.
It would be
such
so much.
a thing.
Yeah.
And with dieting brain as well. And if it depends on what time of the month it is. Oh my gosh, absolutely. So there's like, I'm gonna like say there's not body dysmorphic thoughts and processes that go on during your competition prep. Everyone experiences that. And it is very physically focused. So you're working on your aesthetics at the same time, but I tried to mitigate some of that with the mindfulness and meditation stuff that I was doing and the energy work that I was doing. And I feel like you mentioned before, and you made a really awesome point, is that the thing is with tracking, I feel like people get tracking fatigue almost because they're so reliant, and even not just food, like it might be your Apple Watch that's telling you to do X, Y, Z at this time, that time, whatever. We kind of then lose that connection to ourselves. And like you were saying, okay, are we connecting to those hunger cues? How am I feeling energy wise? Like, and like listening to that and, having an understanding around that and connecting to the body, which takes some grounding. I feel like that's kind of, really important to have time away from all these external, things that are telling us what to do, which takes the autonomy out of the process, and we kind of disconnect from our own intuition.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think, like, for example, like a step target is something that I see so much, especially now, like going into the Australian summer. Everyone's like, I have to hit 10K steps. But it's like, okay, but what is the reason behind these 10K steps? Like, what is the reason that you can't hit 8K, be happy with that, go to bed? Why do you have to walk around your living room to hit the last 2,000? Like,
or like, really, jumping on the spot to get the extra.
It's not going to do anything for like your weight loss or whatever the purpose of the steps is. It's not going to do anything. Like, for your mental health, it's probably going to be worse than anything.
Worse.
So
this
like,
is so true. So true.
But it's the same thing with tracking. Like, what is the reason why you're tracking the food, and like, why is it so hard to let go of MyFitnessPal? Like, what is it that actually comes up here? Because like people were losing and gaining weight way before 2005 when MyFitnessPal was invented. Like, it's always possible.
Absolutely. And like, look, bodybuilders, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lee Priest, none of them, they didn't have friggin' MyFitnessPal back then, and they had friggin' amazing physique. So hey, it hasn't been going on this whole time. Like, this is actually a new thing, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like it does create so much anxiety too. And I feel like the other thing you had mentioned is like, running around the living room to get those 2,000 steps. It's like, I feel like we sometimes approach things from downstream rather than upstream. And the upstream would be, what your relation and your thought process is to whatever you're doing, and how that's going to impact you positive or negatively, which is then going to have a influence on your body physiology and what your, cortisol levels, adrenaline levels, things like that. Because if you're so stressed about those little minute things, which aren't going to make a huge difference in the bigger scheme of things, like, it's actually going to work against you, not for you.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. And please, guys, listen to Morgan. She clearly knows what she's talking about here. But for someone who has been like obsessed with tracking their food for a long time, or not even obsessed, but like just have relied on MyFitnessPal or any kind of tracking app for a long period of time, like, what would be the first step for them? Like, what did you do as to kind of wean yourself off it?
To be honest, I'm a super flexible person, and everyone's just like, Morgan, you just like, so my friends are just like, you're way too flexible. So I'm going to use some of my clients as an example.
Okay.
I do work with a lot of women who have had eating disorder tendencies. And so I think for them, it's not trying to force them just straight out of like using an app. But it's also bringing in more optionality for them. So for example, like when I'm talking to some of my clients with their check-ins, they might have, anxiety around, eating out on the weekend or something like that. So we might go, okay, well, let's just start with maybe doing, 5 days of tracking during the week. And then on the weekend, you might actually have this free day of where you're not tracking anything. And you're actually using that as well as like a, or it might be a high calorie day, where you can just enjoy yourself and, eat some foods that might be higher or denser in calories. So it'd be like little things like that. And just over time, you might be like, okay, let's just do 2 days untracked. Or, you know, if you're eating really structured and you like to eat the same sort of staple foods and you're really good with your meal prep and stuff, because I still, even though I don't track, I still meal prep because I know I'm going to be busy during the week. I may not have time every day to create different meals and stuff. So it might be, well, if you know that you're going to be eating pretty much the same foods each day, during the week, if it's more structured, try to not track during the week. And if you get to the weekend and, you know, it might be like flipping it around like that. But I always kind of, I guess, throw different options out there because everyone's different. What works for one person may be completely dysregulating and like overwhelming for another person. So I think it's like very nuanced depending on what that person's tendencies are and what might feel comfortable for them and realistic for them. But also, you know, it might not even be stopping tracking initially. It could be like, hey, well, let's continue the tracking if there's a lot of anxiety around stopping. But let's actually incorporate some mindfulness, some grounding techniques. Let's just try to get you into your body a little bit more and building safety around that first rather than it being, okay, well, let's just direct straight to the app. Because at the end of the day, that anxiety is really probably coming from something, you know, there's definitely some emotions there and there's some like resistance or blocks there on a subconscious level. So actually just getting some awareness around that and observing what's showing up on that level, that could also be another way to start with first, to build safety within that person's nervous system to then move them away from tracking.
Yes, I love all of this. And this is why you should work with a coach when you're doing this. Because it sounds
absolutely
so simple. It's like, just delete the app or just don't track. Like, if you're someone who's been tracking for years, it's so freaking scary. It's like basically like you just going in, like sitting in the car and driving a car for the first time and never having a lesson. Like, it's basically the same thing. Like, it's so scary. It's so overwhelming. And I have so many people who have tracked and then they're like, oh, I just stopped working with my coach because I want to eat intuitively. I'm like, this is like the worst thing that you can do. Like, with no support, no like specific goal in mind, like it is going to be difficult. So like Morgan said, like having that person there to like help you, not just with like food, but also with like the stress and mindfulness techniques and all the other stuff that comes with letting go of tracking. It's not just the food, it's so much else.
Yeah, absolutely. And just inviting compassion and forgiveness, because I feel like when you do have that rigidity in your system and that perfectionistic part that wants to get it right, you know, is very much, no, I have to have this outcome. It has to work this way. And I feel like if we can also, you know, tap into a little bit more self-compassion and self-love, things tend to like ease a little bit, and then it becomes like more permission or space to be able to surrender or let go into another process. So I feel like that's a big one too.
Absolutely. And like how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So if you actually do, like if you have a good relationship with yourself, it is going to be easier to let go of MyFitnessPal or to be a bit more forgiving if you're not hitting the exact step every single day and stuff like that. But if you haven't worked on that relationship, these things are going to be like a million times harder. So having a coach, like this, if there's anything I could go back and do is like have a coach from like these kind of periods of my life when I had no clue what I was doing. But I mean, it's like we said before, like it makes us who we are now. And you can't go
absolutely, and it's all a learning experience.
100%. So you're not tracking now, obviously? Or have you
no, so what I done is I kind of just gave myself some time off. I don't do personally, like I've done reverse dieting before. For me and my system, it doesn't align. And you know, I'm these days at just switching off back to that space of like, you know, of just self-love, just like enjoyment of food. This food is going to nourish my soul and I'm friggin' enjoying every single bite or morsel of it. And so that's like how I kind of approach
Yeah.
if I'm having a muffin, I just had a muffin before, or like, you know, donut, whatever it might be. So, but sorry, I forgot what the question was.
No, I just asked if you're tracking now.
Oh, yes. So, no, I'm not tracking, but I did do a few days like the other week just to kind of see where I was at.
Yep.
And see what my intake was, and just to, you know, it's always good just to kind of refer back. And so I'm kind of happy with where I'm sort of sitting calorie wise, or perceived calorie wise now. And that's where I'll kind of maintain until I have my next kind of goal that I'm sort of working towards.
Yeah. And what is that going to be?
Well, I'm definitely taking a break, and I'm coming to Bali in January, which I'm super excited about. Yeah, but after that, and so yeah, just until then, I'm just, you know, kind of just living at maintenance and doing my thing, and then you know, the idea is that I may do Worlds next year, which is in August. Yeah, in Vegas.
Exciting.
So yeah.
Do you think that you will keep this approach for that, or do you think that you will go with a coach, or what's the plan for that?
See, look, I'm not averse to tracking, and I feel like potentially, you know, if I was to go into my next fat loss phase or do a photo shoot prep or whatever, I probably would start, you know, maybe tracking for a period of time. So I'm not like, it has to be this or it has to be that way. I'm just totally like, there are different tools that I can use, and I'm just kind of open to seeing sort of where I'm at by that point when I start my prep. And I mean, training wise, intensity wise, it's always there because I love it, and for performance reasons as well. I love doing my compound lifts and challenging myself in that way. So the training side of things is always pretty consistent. But yeah, I guess just the approach to food, and being a little bit more specific with, you know, my intake and what I need to do to build a better physique for the next show. Potentially, yeah, I could end up tracking for that.
Now, I love what you said before about that you don't just have one tool for everything, because that's literally how you should be looking at, well, basically your whole life. Like, you don't have to do everything the same way every single day. Like, you're allowed to change. You're allowed to track for a couple of days if that's what you want to do, just to see where you're at, and then you're allowed to not track as well. That's what it's all about, like finding that balance of like what makes you feel good and actually feel good, and not just I need to do this like from an obsession kind of point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like our systems, I feel like change all the time, like whether it be season to season, or you may have different life stuff going on at different times, or, you know, things can feel quite in flow, and at other times things might feel quite challenging, and there's just heaps of, you know, deadlines and things like that. So, you know, what might work in some periods is not necessarily going to work in others. And that's like you were saying, it's important to be able to find some balance and also have optionality. That's important for me. If I have options, I'm happy.
Yeah.
If I have one option and I have to do one thing, as you would see with my work, that's like, oh my God. It's like, ready from my system.
No, I love that. But I think it's really good. And I think like being able to have all those like open options also like helps you to not get stuck in that kind of all or nothing perfectionist mindset, because you're like, no, it's okay, I can do this. Oh, it's all right, I can do that. And it's just such a much better way to live, and so much more like freeing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to have goals. Definitely, like always setting goals, you know, just to give you some structure and direction. But how you approach that, I think it's great to be able to have different options and fluidity within that too. Yeah,
100% agree. Well, Morgan, it's been so nice to chat to you. Thank you so much for taking the time off your busy day. If people
thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. Are you taking on clients? Like, how can people work with you? How can they find you?
So I'm definitely taking on clients. So I'm actually offering a lot of more the mindset, you know, mindset kind of energy work stuff. So if that kind of, you know, appeals to anyone, that's something that I'm kind of offering. And also, that's in an online manner. So you can reach me at Instagram, Morgan Langford _. I do have a website. It's bodytempleByMorgan.com.
Beautiful. Are you still doing photo shoots as well?
Oh, yes, I am. And so yeah, that's Body Temple photo on Instagram.
Yeah.
But also Body Temple by Morgan. The website has it all listed there. I absolutely love working with women, whether it be, you know, with coaches if they have like group photo shoots, or whether it's individual stuff, whether it's your first photo shoot and you've always wanted to do it but not felt, you know, confident. I'm so love, you know, I guess glamming women up and making them feel like a queen in front of the camera. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
my other side passion.
I can totally vouch for that. Like I have never felt more like a glam queen than when I work with you. So love doing the shoots with you. I love everything that you do. Thank you again so much. And guys, if you like this episode, please make sure that you screenshot it, put it on your story, tag myself, tag Morgan, tag Women's Fitness Academy. And yeah, have a lovely day, everyone. And thank you so much for listening.